I would like to welcome the project coordinator of SafeHabitus, David Meredith from the organization Chagas in Ireland, who is going to present us what this SafeHabitus project is about. So good morning, David. If you can please unmute yourself, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning, Patricia. You would think after 4 years of using Zoom, I would know how to unmute myself. Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. I'm David Meredith. I work for Chagas, which is the Irish Agriculture and Food Development Authority, and I am the coordinator and project leader and principal investigator on the SafeHabitus project. So SafeHabitus, we have 20 partners in 13 countries, and we have 11 communities of practice. So Patricia mentioned the multi-actor nature of the project, and that's where we work on the ground through these community of practices to bring together end users and other stakeholders that can help improve working conditions and the health and safety of farmers. And that is the mission of SafeHabitus. And we do this by striving to achieve a number of objectives. The first of these is to enhance understanding and awareness by policymakers, farmers' organizations, trade unions, and health authorities, and other stakeholders who have influence in this area. And we seek to enhance understanding not just of the challenges, but of the potential solutions to those challenges faced by farmers and farm workers. The second objective is to improve European and national policy and governance frameworks related to farming and working conditions, and sharing innovative bottom-up initiatives. And again, this is where our communities of practice come in terms of both identifying innovative bottom-up initiatives and trialing them and adapting them to their situations and sharing that knowledge with others more broadly across Europe. And then finally, supporting the wider use of corporate social responsibility innovations by farm businesses. And this really links us to some of what we're going to hear today. Because before embarking on supporting the wider use of corporate social responsibility, we need to understand the challenges faced by farm workers at the level of the farm, but also the farm businesses and right throughout the food supply chain or food value chain. The approach that we're using is to work very closely with end users, policymakers, and researchers to apply a multi-actor approach to better understand the barriers to health and safety and develop policy, both national and EU, and practical tools to support adoption of measures that improve working conditions. And this approach is inclusive of all vulnerable populations, including self-employed farmers, employers, employees. And in relation to those employees, we're focusing on a wide variety of different groups, including seasonal, mobile, and migrant workers. And we're here today to learn more about the experiences and conditions faced by migrant workers in agriculture in Europe. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Patricia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, for this introduction. And very brief. I know it's a very big project, but we will have more opportunities to dig more on what SafeHabitus is about. And now, after this introduction, I would like to welcome Carlos Ruiz Ramirez from Oxfam Intermon, who is also a partner in the SafeHabitus, and who is going to give us a bit of an overview on working and labor conditions of migrant workers in the agri-food and the agri-food value chains. Good morning, Carlos. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Patricia. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for coming, especially to the speakers. Today, we are going to discuss an important and globally relevant issue, the condition of migrant workers in the European industrial agriculture. Far from being limited to specific regions or countries, this phenomenon is a complex challenge that affects communities around the world. Today, we will focus on understanding how migrant workers, an integral part of European agricultural value chain, face multiple challenges, including exploitative working and living conditions. it is important to recognize that migrants are the most vulnerable part of the system. Our discussion will focus on highlighting these realities, not only to increase understanding of the issues, but also to highlight the importance of focusing our attention on improving the situation. Through this seminar, we hope to generate an informative and productive dialogue that will help us better understand this topic, this thematic. At Oxfam Intermon, one of the areas we focus on is the agri-food value chain as the root of the challenge faced by migrant workers in industrial agriculture is the current system of production and consumption. This complete approach allows us to address the problem fully, recognizing the interconnection between the different actors and processes involved. A key part of our work involves working with supermarkets and other relevant bodies in multi-stakeholder initiatives. Through this collaboration, we try to influence the sustainability and human rights policies of these kind of companies. These actions are essential to ensure that business practices are not only economically viable, but also socially responsible and fair. However, it is important to understand that this action cannot depend only on the decision of companies or supermarkets. The need for effective regulation is clear, as demonstrated by the due diligence directive that is going to be implemented by the European Union. This directive is an important step in providing a legal framework to ensure that companies and supermarkets act responsibly, not only in their commercial interest, but also in the interest of workers and affected communities. On the other hand, a particular concern on Oxfam agenda is the gender issues associated with migrant labor in industrial agriculture. We recognize that while all migrant workers face significant challenges, women migrant workers often face additional vulnerabilities. This reality is clearly seen in situations like the one we have observed in Huelva, for example, where migrant women face not only the usual difficulties associated with agricultural work, but also unique challenges because they are women. At Oxfam, we are working to highlight and address these specific gender issues, and we recognize that in order to achieve real equality and justice in agri-food value chains, it is crucial to recognize and address the gender inequalities and vulnerabilities faced by migrant women workers in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlos, for raising awareness about those specific vulnerabilities when it comes to gender issues for women and migrant workers. Now and lastly, before we enter more into the concrete case studies in different countries, I would like to welcome Joan Molinero from the University Institute for Studies on Migration from the University of Comillas. And you, Joan, are going to set a bit more the scene regarding industrial agriculture and migrant work in Europe. Good morning, Joan, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Patricia. I'm so happy to see so many people connected. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, we do. Thanks. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to start quickly because we don't have too much time, but I would like to thank my colleagues, Sam Scott and Alessandra Corrado, for joining us today, as well as my colleagues from Oxfam and from Comillas for having organized this webinar with me. It's a pleasure to talk about this very relevant topic today. So as mentioned by Patricia, I'm going to talk to give an overall picture on how industrial agriculture and migrant work have evolved in the last decades in the European context. Okay, so first of all, I will talk about the change from the peasant family model to Fordism in agriculture. Okay, so sometimes when we think about farming, we have these kind of romantic images in mind. No, I just wrote in Google family farming, and I got these bucolic images from there. But this is not the whole reality of agriculture in Europe. Okay, it's true that according to Eurostat, about 95% of EU farms are family farms. Okay. But we have to know that as well, there's been a decline of 1.4 million farms in our continent between 2005 and 2020. Also, 2/3 of farms in Europe are still small. They are less than 5 hectares, okay? 82.4% of utilized agricultural area, these are data from Eurostat, okay, is in the hands of big cooperatives and companies holding farms over 20 hectares, okay? What does this mean? That in reality, even if family farms are the majority of agricultural productive units in Europe, the reality is that the most performative or the whole bunch of the production in Europe is in the hands of big companies, okay? So this constant transfer from smallest to biggest farms is an ongoing process that we have seen in different countries like the United States, Canada, etc., and relies on what has been called the Californian model or the industrial agricultural model, that is applying the Fordist productive model to agricultural production, okay? Here you have a picture that is very representative of this impact and this transfer. This is the province of Almeria in Spain. You can see in the upper photo how was the region in the 60s and how is nowadays. Each white point is a greenhouse, and this can be seen from space. This is what is called the plastic sea, because it's the biggest concentration of greenhouses in an agricultural enclave in the world. This is how agricultural industry, industrial agriculture looks like, okay? It's an industry, even if it belongs to the primary sector, it employs the same logic as the secondary sector, no? So what are the main features of industrial agriculture? Well, there is a transfer, a change from PT commodity production to a capitalist production. It employs wage labor, so no peasants or no family members. There is the need of a huge workforce, okay? There is an increased capital investment. There is a creation of agricultural enclaves. What I wrote here, from the seed to the track, implies that an agricultural enclave is a geographical space where the whole production is carried out in the same physical location, okay? From the plantation of the seed to the picking of the product, the transformation of the product, it's frozen in the when it's stored in the company, and then it's put in the truck for exporting, because agricultural enclaves are oriented towards exporting. The consumption in their nearby areas is very reduced, okay? They are oriented towards exporting, okay? And industrial agriculture is characterized by the employment of agrochemicals, of machinery, more recently on digitalization processes, and the proliferation of greenhouses, as you can see in the picture. Most important is to keep in mind that, according to Eurostat, Spain and Italy produce about 45% of the total production of fresh fruits and vegetables of the European Union. If we add Poland, we have more than half of the production, okay? This implies that there is a European division of labor where at least these two countries, but other countries as well, are quite performative, as the Netherlands or Greece, for instance, but the most important are Spain and Italy, have built a very strong industrial agricultural sector that is practically feeding the whole continent, okay? So these pictures represent more what is the current or how the current agricultural workforce looks like in Europe, okay, in industrial farming. I mean, in the left picture, we can see a group of Moroccan women in the province of Huelva. They mainly come with a program of recruiting at source, a temporary migration program put in place by the Spanish state. And in the right picture, we have some sub-Saharan migrants working in the Italian fields, okay? So why migrants are employed in this kind of industrial agriculture? Okay, while countries like Spain and Italy were implementing this model, they started in the 80s, but this was accelerated in the 90s. there was an ongoing social process that was happening, that in rural areas there was aging, there was the population, we all know about the rural exodus, and as well the work offered by this industrial sector was not very appealing. It's not attractive because it offered low salaries. We all know that the competitiveness of agricultural products relies on their cheap nature. Okay, so low salaries, it's a strenuous work, we know. We can see it, imagine it by looking at the picture in the right, how strenuous is working in agriculture. And also there is a spatial and social isolation because this work is carried out in rural areas far from cities, no? So how did the sector solve the equation of needing a huge workforce when people were living these areas? Okay, the solution was employing migrants who were growingly coming to Spain and Italy, but also in other countries that were in the past, Spain and Italy were emigration countries and they were becoming immigration countries, okay? So profiting of these new inflows of population, they were driven to the agriculture sector, at least a part of them. Why? Because they were accepting these conditions. We all know how migrations work, because salaries were better than in origin, because working in agriculture was one of the first opportunities to start a project life in destination, to regularize themselves if they were in an irregular situation, etc. So that's why migrants were being incorporated in the sector.
1 minute,
Here I
Joan,
expose. Okay, here. Here I expose some general figures, okay, about this. Below you see two graphics. Just I put them to show you the importance of how migrants have constantly, growingly become an important workforce in both contexts. And these statistics only show migrants in a regular situation, so the reality is bigger. Okay, these migrants come in complex migration itineraries. So they come from the European continent. There is intra-European migration. Romanian migrants are the biggest part of the workforce of migrant workers in industrial agriculture. They also come in seasonal or circular migration programs, as the one I mentioned in Huelva, temporary programs aiming to drive migrants to work between 6 and 9 months maximum per year in agricultural enclaves, and then they have to come back and return to origin. But also there are permanent stayers working in some enclaves, okay? Legal status is very important. It's not the same as having a residence permit and being irregular, or also being a posted worker. This is a new reality, quite new reality, that we have identified of migrant workers that are employed, for instance, in the province of Murcia in Spain, and they are driven to work in France, but they contribute to the Spanish social security because it's cheaper than the French one, okay? There are some social issues, some social problems of housing, for instance. A huge part of this workforce resides in farm facilities that are very basic, but we have seen the proliferation of slums, of vagrancy as well. And well, the working conditions, as highlighted in the majority of the academic research and social research on this topic, show that there is a huge extension of exploitation that is very basic. No, low salaries and strenuous work are the basic features of exploitation. Piecework as well, that in some countries is banned, but it's even employed. Blacklisting as well. Blacklisting implies that those who come under temporary migration schemes, if they do not behave well, if they protest, if they don't show that they're performative according to the eyes of the employers, may be inscribed in blacklist, meaning that they are not going to be re-employed in the next campaign. So here I put two statements from two United Nations special rapporteurs, the first one on extreme poverty and human rights, and on his visit in Spain, to Spain in 2020, and the second on the right to food in her visit to Italy in the same year. I just show two sentences that are very representative and shocking. No, Philip Alston said, in Huelva, in Spain, I met with workers living in a migrant settlement in conditions that rival the worst I have seen anywhere in the world. And in the case of Italy, the Mrs. Hilal Elver said, in my visit to a ghetto in Apulia, I witnessed the terrible working and living conditions for agricultural migrant workers, where some lived in overcrowded accommodation with scarce access to water and without access to electricity, sanitation, or basic needs. These are very huge problems linked to this insertion of migrant workers. So just Patricia, to finish, I'm going to finish right now, a few conclusions. Migrants are essential, and they were declared as this during the pandemic. Several countries approved exceptions to the limitation or to the restriction of mobility, mentioning that migrants are essential. So they are essential in real, but also sometimes in legal terms for this productive sector. Although there are extreme situations as the one I mentioned, they do not represent the whole sector. This is, of course, important to highlight, but we have to keep in mind that this is a huge social problem that is happening. And in some cases, as southern Italy, this is the predominant situation, okay? The problem is so huge that the EU Parliament was concerned about this and promoted the approval of the social conditionality clause of the CAP that maybe we will have time to discuss in the Q&A session. And well, I want to mention that migrants are not passive and do not accept these conditions without protesting or making any actions. They have organized themselves in different trade unions, associations, etc. Here I put some of them just to keep this in mind, just to not reproduce the idea that they are like sometimes we see like slaves. No, they are not slaves. They are workers, and they know their conditions and they react to them and they accept them as well in complex ways. And finally, there have been also strikes, demonstrations, but the reality is that it's not a strong workforce because temporality and deportability, that's why migrants are so vulnerable, as Carlos mentioned before, make this workforce mobile. They don't stay too much time, tend to not stay too much time in enclaves, and they tend to disappear, to go to other sectors or to other countries. So this makes that the struggle quite weak. So thank you. Happy to discuss them with you. And I leave the floor to Patricia again.
Thanks a lot, Joan, for presenting us this evolution of the industrial model that, as you said, has brought a lot of challenges, complex challenges for the sector, and especially for seasonal workers be at the end of the chain, as Carlos said. And you mentioned the social conditionality of the CAP as an important EU instrument that has the willingness to tackle at least perhaps this challenge. And yes, indeed, we will have the Q&A later. So remember, if you want already to type questions, or later you can also raise your hands and we can continue the discussion on that point. You also mentioned already several countries, Joan, even if you focus more in Spain and Italy because of the particularity of the industrial sector. So we are going to start now with the let's say country case studies, and let's hear what each of them have to say in that respect. And a bit to wrap up with all the Spanish representation, we are going to start with the case study from Spain. So first, I would like to welcome now Juan Castillo, also from the University Institute for Studies on Migration of the University of Comillas, and again Carlos Ruiz, and the two of you are going to present a case that has been already mentioned briefly for the workers in the berry sector in Huelva in southwest Spain. So if I can see you, Juan. And there you are. Good morning, Juan. Please go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, as Patricia just said, this presentation is by Carlos and me, but as Carlos has already many other points of this event where he has to intervene and to speak, we decided I'll be doing this presentation for all of you. So yeah, I would like to start by saying first that I'm very happy to be here, like in this space, with so many people, almost 70 now, here interested in our work, listening to what we have to say. So thank you all, and thank you, of course, to everybody that has been involved in organizing this webinar. So, okay, I'm going to start. Okay, one moment. I guess you guys. Okay. One moment. No, it's okay. Okay, one moment. Sorry about it.
No worries.
Okay, I think I have to close and enter again. So I'm sorry about it. It will be just a moment.
Okay. As we said, there is always a technical issue, no matter how many years we've been all rehearsing and using Zoom. So I take the opportunity to remind you, we will have the Q&A only after the presentation of the case studies. We're going now to hear from the Spanish case, but then we will also have the opportunity to hear from Italy, Germany, the case in the UK, and also in Romania. Therefore, after that, I think we will have like enough food for thoughts to go into the Q&A, and I especially encourage the SafeHabitus partners that are perhaps not specifically, yes, addressing this as part of the community of practices, but that are thinking that this could be also an important debate, to please ask questions. Is the moment. Don't keep it for yourself. It's any question is important for the debate. We are seeing now the presentation. We see the strawberry field in the greenhouses, and we have you back, Juan.
Okay, so sorry all about this. As Patricia said, little technical issues. I'll keep on with the presentation. So yes, as my colleague Joan just explained, Spain is all together with Italy one of the main agro-industrial producers in Europe, and Huelva is one of the main enclaves in Spain. So this is what
Sorry, Juan. Sorry to interrupt you. There is some background noise of a person speaking behind you, and it's difficult to.
Yeah, I can hear her.
No, perché capisce che se io devo andare lì me la fanno loro. Cioè io
1 second. Can I please ask the rest to mute yourself? Let me see. It's Irene. Okay. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
That's it. Now we can hear you.
Okay.
Please, sorry.
As I was saying, I'm going to be, and as you can see as well, I'm going to be talking about the specific situations in Huelva. First thing to let you all know, one of the things we are doing, some of the partners involved in SafeHabitus, is a systematic literature review of the situation or situations, experiences of migrants working in agro-industrial agriculture in all of Europe. So what I'm going to be telling about the specific case of Huelva is extracted from this literature review. So what I'm going to be telling is what is the latest information and knowledge available in both civil society and scientific literature about it. So Huelva is located in Andalusia, in the south of Spain, and is, as I was saying, one of the main agro-industrial enclaves in the country. It is mostly specialized in sectors like berries and citrus fruits. The most big salient crop in this enclave is strawberries. That's why I chose this picture. Being Huelva the second biggest strawberry producer and exporter in all of the world, second only to California, and the biggest in Europe. So it is a big part of the phenomenon. And for exactly the same reasons Joan just explained for the phenomenon in general, migrant labor has come to play a crucial role in that industry and its economic success over the years. But this important function of migrant labor in the enclave sometimes comes at expense of them migrant workers facing some hard working and living conditions. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. Nonetheless, their experiences are not the same for all of them. They are quite different, mostly depending on their origins and their legal status in Spain. So on the rest of this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the specific situations faced by the three main profiles of migrant workers based on these characteristics of origin and legal status. So the first one would be the workers hired through the GECO program. The GECO program is this type of recruited in source policy that Joan just explained. At this moment, the Spanish state has bilateral agreements with different countries, but mostly more than 90% of the workers coming through this hired in origin scheme come from Morocco, and they are the first thing is important to understand is they are mostly almost entirely women, and almost entirely women from rural areas, and especially women with children in their care. This selection criteria has been established over the years because it was noted that women, especially women that have children in their care back in Morocco, are the less likely, let's say, to abandon the program and stay in Spain. And also, they are the ones with the biggest incentives to want and need to be hired again next year. So they are the ones that are less likely again to do anything that don't please the employer that brought them to Huelva, let's say. So that makes them a flexible and easy to manage workforce. These women also is important to understand that they are only allowed to stay legally in Spain and in Huelva and to be part of this program as long as they remain working for the specific employer that brought them here. So this makes it almost practically impossible for them to negotiate situations, to complain when some of their rights are not respected. So that makes them, again, a very easy to manage workforce and a very vulnerable workforce at that, because it doesn't mean that all of them are exposed to abuses, all of them have their rights unrespected, of course not. But what it means is when some of them are exposed to abuses or anything like that, there's not much they can and want to do about it. So reviewing the literature, as I said before, we identified actually some of the abuses they are reported to face with some frequency. It's been reported of them not getting paid in time or getting paid less than they should have to, or not getting paid the extra hours they sometimes do. They have been reported as well to being denied medical attention or to being denied proper rest when they injure themselves, which is quite frequent as well, given the hard condition of the work they do. There have even been some cases reported of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, these kind of problems, and also of substandard housing, meaning them being denied the type of housing that by law they are supposed to be given. So again, it doesn't mean that all of these women face that, but sometimes it happens, and when it happens, there's not much they can do about it. So that's why they are especially vulnerable to it. The next, okay. Yeah, the next profile of workers is African male workers that live in Shantytown. I talk about African because a lot of them come from sub-Saharan countries, but also from some North African countries like Morocco as well. This is mostly young, alone male workers that get irregularly, let's say, into Spain. And as Joan was explaining, agriculture, and especially this type of industrial agriculture, it normally is one sector where it is especially easy, let's say, to get a job with no contract, to get a job irregularly, to get a job being in this irregular situation. So that's why many of them work in these sectors, and in Huelva as well. They mostly live in these shanty towns, in these slums, not because they cannot pay for a home in the nearby towns, but because they even when they can pay for it because they work in agriculture, they are denied access to housing, to flats, to houses, based on racial and ethnic terms. So that's why even when they are receiving a salary, they end up living in this extreme deprivation situation. In this, as you can see in this picture, this is actually, I think this is in Lucena town, in one of the main agricultural towns in Huelva. And they lack water, they lack electricity, they lack, of course, cleaning service of any public service at all. Their homes are made with plastic, with wooden, with anything they can get their hands on. Actually, so there are not houses well suited for protecting them from the extreme heat in South Spain in spring and summer. It's not well suited to provide them with minimum sanitary conditions, making easy the spread of illnesses and all kind of problems.
Juan, if you can, we need to move to the wrap up of your presentation, please.
Okay. So yeah, just fast, I collected a number of pictures, so you can see that it is not a little situation. There is many of them. And also, well, I have no time, it seems, to explain the last situation. So I'll be more than happy to get into it if anyone is interested in the Q&A. So thank you all for listening.
Thanks a lot, Juan. I think that we get the picture and the idea of what you are referring to.
Yeah.
For this particular case, I would like to also mention we are spotlighting something that is a concrete situation in a particular sector. And for the intramobility, we will also have the opportunity to hear later the presentation from the Romanian colleagues. Jarko, I would suggest that we keep questions and comments from the Q&A, please, also because we are a bit lagging behind in the program with the technical issues, but we will for sure come back to that, and perhaps we need to extend, even if we are interested in continuing the conversation, the webinar for some minutes. But now we, after we have seen Spain, let's go to see what other countries' reality in that particular case are about. And I would like to welcome Professor Alessandra Corrado from the University of Calabria to tell us what is the situation from Italy, and perhaps we see some similarities with Spain, since both have been already mentioned on this, or not. You will let us know, Alessandra, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm happy to join this group, to have the opportunity for debating about these very important issues for Europe. In a way, my presentation actually will try to complement those by Joan and Juan. Starting for the picture of Italian agriculture that reflect the data, the statistics displayed by Johan. Actually, the majority of Italian farms are family farms or individual farms, more than 90%, and the average dimension of the farm is about 8 hectares. So quite the same that at the European level. The characteristic, of course, is that one of an increasing industrialization during the last decades of agriculture. But I would say that the Italian agriculture moved in a way like as in other countries, moved in a way in a process of post-Fordist transformation. I mean that apart from the industrialization of agricultural process, some others process affected the condition of farming, with implication and effects also in the condition of employment and of the employment of immigrant workers. In particular, the integration in the global markets and the increasing competition from international markets, the inclusion in long value chains that caused a squeeze in prices that had immediate effects on farms' revenues and on wages, and the flexibilization of labor. In these conditions, the demand for migrant workers has risen during the last decades. But other factors have been important in causing this rise in the demand for migrant workers in Italy. And again, these are factors quite common with other European countries. These are factors affecting the restructuring of agriculture and the farms. That is the problems, the aging of producers, and the problems in generational turnover that make difficult to replace family work in the farm. Another specificity, in a way, of the Italian agriculture, but also due to the high number of quality products, that means products very connected with the territory and with the process of rural development according to the EU regulation, and also organic production. I mean, this kind of process are very high in number, especially in Italy, and this is quite specific characteristic of Italy that again is the other side of the national agriculture, that is made of very industrialized production of commodity products distributed in long value chain, but also quality products that are distributed especially in local markets or in short value chains. And I can say that also in this production, migrant workers are important.
Alessandra, you will take a couple of minutes, please.
Yeah, it could be interesting to highlight that in Italy we have witnessed some changes during the last 10 years due to the introduction of a special regulation addressing severely punishing irregular gangbustering, black labor, and exploitation in agriculture. Due to this law, controls in agriculture have risen, and as a consequence, also regular contracts in agriculture. This doesn't mean that exploitation disappeared, but condition of gray labor are spreading in agriculture. Let me show some just 2 slides. The problems displayed by Juan before are very common also in Italy, especially in southern Italy. This is the case of rural ghettos, so housing problems and access to basic services. In the last 4 years, two national programs have been developed in Italy addressing these conditions and also promoting social inclusion for migrant laborers at local level. But the main characteristics of this intervention is emergency. That means that the sustainability in the long period is questionable, is quite problematic. And the other aspects, recent aspects, is the rise in numbers of quota for let's say the import of laborers from no EU countries. That is following the 3 years programs, and this is something quite new, following the alarm sounded by national employers about the lack of laborers. This lack of laborers is in a way caused by a high turnover in agriculture, the moving out of the sector by many Eastern European workers, moving abroad, especially in Northern Europe, in agriculture again, or in other sector like building, and the regularization in some cases of asylum seekers, especially of asylum seekers, that in the last year has been an important component of migrant workers employed in agriculture. Just to conclude, my main point is that the composition of migrant workers in agriculture is quite articulated and heterogeneous, and the characteristic of farmers employing migrant workers in agriculture are quite different, and an important problem affecting their conditions of employment and inclusion at local level is the lack or the limits of national policies and local policies. At the local level, we can speak of policies of exclusion that make it difficult for migrant workers to live in a proper way and securing their rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. You mentioned a lot of things that have some similarities with the challenges faced in Spanish case, and for sure the turnover and the aging population, but also the lack of enough national policies. Even if you mentioned that there were some programs that are already trying to address social exclusion, we can perhaps go back to that later in the Q&A. But for the sake of time, so we are like running a bit late. I will welcome now our next speaker, Tim Sam from Oxfam Germany, that is going to present us from his side, his views on migrant workers in Germany for the asparagus, strawberry, and the vegetable farms in Germany. Good morning, Tim. You're already sharing your screen. We're seeing it. You can put it in presentation mode. Perhaps it will be more visible for everybody, and then
Yes.
the floor is yours.
Yeah, 1 second. Can I get rid of the sidebar? Let me do it down here. Now, where is it?
Yes.
Here I would go. Nice. Yeah. Can you also see me? Yeah. Okay. So it works.
Yes.
Great. Happy to be here. Happy to have the opportunity to present some of our work. Let me just click away this thing here. I hope it still works now. Okay. So I'd just like to give a quick update, quick input on what we as Oxfam Germany have done this year, which is a study on the German fresh produce sector and working conditions in that sector. Especially since the COVID pandemic, there has been a lot of public attention around the issue of or the topic of working conditions of migrant workers in Germany. Also, a hugely racist debate in the entire media, blaming migrants for spreading the virus, whilst at the same time providing accommodation where workers are living super close with many people at the same location, where it is super difficult for workers to actually protect themselves from the infection. But the discussion publicly was around migrants actually being the cause of spreading the virus. So super strong societal issues that connect a lot to racism and economic exploitation. And in this study that we conducted in German, the title of the study is "Das hier ist nicht Europa." In English, it would be "We're not in Europe here," and that's a quote by one worker that we talked with in this study, who shared, I expected it to be different. I was promised very something else than what I've found here in the work in Germany. So what we do when we work on these topics, we always try to link it to our work on supermarkets, because we as Oxfam Germany work a lot on the supply chains of German supermarkets, because we think that they have the power to actually change these situations, as they are in many cases the largest buyers. So these supermarkets that you see on the right in this map, Aldi, Edeka, Rewe, and Lidl, they'd account for roughly 85% of the retail grocery sales in entire Germany. So if you want to sell your produce as a bigger bigger producer, then you need to go through the shelves of these supermarkets. And as they are so powerful, we find a lot about the negotiation powers really lying with them, and we argue that this really creates downwards pressure on the working conditions. In this research, we looked into the the agricultural sector in Germany. We had conducted interviews at four producers throughout Germany. That was kind of a sample we developed together with it's called Initiative Faire Landarbeit. It means something like initiative for just rural work, and it is an initiative that is actually funded by the state, and it is linked to the trade unions in Germany, the IGBAU, which would be the trade union on agriculture as well, and they have consultancies that speak all the languages that are also spoken in the by workers in the agricultural sector, and do field visits. We went with them on field visits as well, and have a very good knowledge and actually quite good overview of the issues in this sector, and was super helpful to work together with them because they really knew very well what of these 4 cases are actually structural issues and what are maybe more is something that is only one-off examples that they haven't seen either. So in this study there were interviews with 66 workers, and it was already done in the season of 2022, and then this year my colleagues and I went to some of the producers again, or at least the locations where the producers are based. And we then, for example, wait in front of supermarkets and wait for them to finish work, be there with a interpreter, and then just try to chat with workers right after they finished work, and to verify also what we found there. And the key issues that we are finding is that even though Germany has a comparatively very high minimum wage, the employers do find ways to reduce this minimum wage. And the first strategy that we found how the employers actually do that is by deducting huge amounts for the housing of the workers. So you see on the left here that is the city of Vetschau in Brandenburg is a tiny city in the middle of nowhere, and the €6.24 on the left shows what is the average housing rent in that city, and this €40 is what a migrant worker pays in the accommodation of the producer. So the producer kind of lowers the wage by asking from the workers insanely high housing fees, and thus by trying to reduce their costs. At the same time, the quality of the housing is not amazing. So there was moldy walls and all that, so it's really ridiculous. This €40 per square meter is even much higher than in major German cities in the fanciest neighborhoods. So it's crazy. Then other ways how minimum wage.
Tim, a couple of minutes for you to wrap up, please.
2 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So another issue that workers were describing was that they did not get paid the hours that they actually worked, but were they got less. And some even said if they didn't make the quota that they were asked to do, then they would not get a job next day, but they had to still pay the housing. So it was kind of a fine if they didn't work as fast as they should work. Another issue was insufficient health insurance. Basically, the employers, or there is a system that thinks that workers are insured in their home country, but that's often not the case, and there is huge gaps between there's huge gaps of health insurance that often lead to the case that workers, once they get sick, just go home sick and just drive home because they're afraid of needing to pay costs here in Germany. And as I have 1 minute left, I just want to focus on this topic of price pressure by German supermarkets. So we linked these working conditions to the price pressure of German supermarkets, spoke with producers and asked them, well, what do you think? How do you negotiate prices with supermarkets? And supermarkets actually said, these producers said stuff like, you know, there are no price negotiations. The supermarket tells me the price I get, and I have to work with that. So for us, the link between the price pressure from the supermarkets to these working conditions is key to influence towards better working conditions. I have a quiz here. We can't do the quiz, no time. Happy for questions later on.
Thanks, Tim. I think that a quiz would have been very, very interesting, but indeed we are like a bit running out of time. We will see how much time we have, and for sure we are going to go back to you. I think we have also like German colleagues, and I think it would be indeed interesting to go back to this wages reduction or negotiation once we hear from the other speakers. Thanks again, Tim, for that. So now we are going to move from Germany, a country that has been hosting and receiving migrants for many, many years, to another country that have also a long tradition in being a recipient country for newcomers, and this is United Kingdom. We have Sam Scott from University of Gloucestershire. I hope I'm pronouncing it well. Good morning, Sam. You are going to present us from the freedom of movement to the guest worker visa situation and evaluating the UK recent approach on tackling the horticultural labor shortages. So, Sam, welcome, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Patricia. Thanks to everyone at SafeHabitus for inviting me. Can you see the screen and hear me okay? See the PowerPoint?
Yes, we do. Thanks, Sam.
Super. Okay. So my name's Sam Scott. I'm based at the University of Gloucestershire. I'm a geography lecturer, and my main interest is in labour migration, particularly low-wage labour migration. And I've interviewed migrant workers and employers in horticulture, and I'm going to use that research experience to talk about the UK system today. To put it in context, I think the UK's moved from a system where horticultural labour demand was being filled as a result of freedom of movement from within the European Union. Then we obviously had Brexit, and we've had a shift now to a visa system where the labour that's filling the vacancies is very much global in origin. Now that shift would have probably have taken place anyway, but it's been sped up, I think, by Brexit and what happened after that. Now the visa system that's emerged has been widely criticised in the UK, and there's a number of reports that have come out criticising the visa system. Some of those criticisms are specific to the visa itself, the guest worker visa itself. Some, I think, would have been present in any case, whether it was labour being supplied through freedom of movement or labour being supplied through the visa system. So it's important to think about whether the criticisms are visa specific or general to the agricultural sector. I think the visa's here to stay. So the question really is around how we improve that visa system. And so I'm just going to put the visa in context in terms of numbers now. You can see here from the table going from 2019 to 2022 how we've had a shift. Prior to 2019, the labour supply was very much around Romanian and Bulgarian, and before Romanian and Bulgarian it was Polish workers, but then we've had a shift in 2019, 2020 to Ukrainian workers, and then in 2022 in particular a real kind of diversification of the labour flow into horticulture, and also an increase in as well in terms of numbers of people being supplied through the visa. In 2022, the number of visas was around 35,000, as the table shows. If we think about the old scheme, because before Polish workers were and Bulgarian and Romanian workers were in the UK, there was an old scheme called the Seasonal Agricultural Worker Scheme. And the numbers at its peak were 25,000. So we've seen an increase in the scale of the visas from the old system through to the freedom of movement through to the new system, an increase in scale, an increase in numbers of people coming in on this new visa scheme. But it's essentially a version of one that existed before the UK relied on free movement, and before it relied on the Polish and Bulgarian and Romanian workers. There was a visa in place from 45 to 2013, then a gap, then a new visa now, and it's that new visa that's come under quite a lot of criticism. it works without going into all the details. It works by having operators or sponsors of the migrants, and there are 6 operators at present. One with its license suspended. There was a 7th AG recruitment that had its license revoked through various issues that were identified with the sponsor, with the operator. Now the government's kind of focus has very much been on putting the emphasis on the operators to make sure the system, on the 6 or 7 operators to make sure the system works well. That's been very much the focus over recent years, and that's partly why one has its license suspended and why one has had its license revoked, because the focus has been on the operators in terms of making the scheme run properly. As far as evaluations of the guest worker visa are concerned, a very recent report from the House of Lords said there's limited and conflicting information in the public domain about how well the scheme is operating, and called on the government to publish its review of the seasonal worker route. I mean, that's true to an extent, but I'd say more of the evidence tends to be on the issues with the scheme than on the advantages of the scheme. So more of the evidence has tended to criticise the scheme over recent years. So some of that's visa specific, as I said at the start. Some of it's just to do with conditions in the horticultural sector in a general sense. I won't go through all of these, but there are various reports up here that have criticised the visa scheme. The top 3 have come from outside of government. Then we've also had the 4th one, which has been a review by government itself of the scheme, has found areas for improvement. We've had Anti-Slavery Commissioner write a letter to the Department of Environment, Fisheries and Rural Affairs, raising concerns about the scheme. And we've had the food sector identified by the UK Labour Inspectorate as being the sector that's at top risk from exploitation. So we've had evidence from outside of government, but also from within government, question and criticise the visa scheme in the way it operates. These are the main criticisms. Once again, I won't go into all the detail here, but I think some of the main criticisms are in bold at the top that have been levelled at the visa scheme. The way in which migrants in source countries, these new source countries, whether it's Nepal, Indonesia, Uzbekistan, or wherever, it's often been said that they've been misled in terms of the pay and conditions on offer. There's also been payments to secure work in advance. So that was one of the reasons why the operator AG Recruitment got its license revoked, because of people having to pay in advance to get work. The longer distance travel, moving from the EU to well beyond the EU, has meant that the costs have increased in terms of getting to the UK, which has meant that there's been a need for more hours of work, and those hours of work haven't always been present. So sometimes workers have been coming to the UK, spending a lot of money to get there, to get the work, and then not perhaps making all of that money back, or just about making that money back before the season ends. So related to that, there's been the issue of debt bondage within the UK through the visa schemes, and they're all things that I guess have emerged in the ones in bold, the top 4 that have emerged in relation to the visa in particular. Now, other issues like poor accommodation, lack of contract, discrimination, the work being precarious, those issues are general to the horticultural sector. But when we go a bit further down the list and we see it's possible, but in practice very difficult to change employer, that's linked to the visa, as is no or very limited recourse to public funds, that's linked to the visa. No pathway to permanent status, that's linked to the visa. Isolation, kept apart from family, that's general. Well, the isolation is general horticultural work, being stranded on the farms, kept apart from family, that's linked to the visa. So some of these criticisms that come from the various reports are visa specific, some are general to do with horticultural work across the sector. As far as recommendations are concerned,
2 minutes, please, Sam.
Okay. Yeah, I realise I've been a bit too ambitious, so apologies if I'm rushing this. As far as recommendations are concerned, And with colleagues at various universities in the UK, we've made these recommendations to government. We've said it's important that the visa is independently monitored and involving interviews with workers who are in place and who have returned. And I've been arguing that actually for quite a while now, that if there's a visa in place, it needs to have independent monitoring. We need to develop what's best practice and promote that. The trade unions in the UK have had very limited inclusion within the horticultural sector, and I think it's time to change that. We've argued you should allow people to select familiar farms, familiar areas to return to. That there should be a pathway to permanent status. There is in Portugal, I think, it's called the Raspberry visa, colloquially. So we've argued that there should be a pathway to permanent status through the temporary visa. Longer than 6 months would be ideal, given the distances people are moving. So there's a recommendation actually for it to move to a 9-month visa, and we need to make sure that that protections are in place through the government inspection agencies. And at the moment, there's a bit of confusion over where responsibility lies. And finally, I think it's quite important to draw on international and academic research to inform UK policy. So there's some of the recommendations we've made insofar as improving the UK visas concerned. So that's it for me. Thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot, Sam, and perhaps we can go back to those recommendations later in the Q&A if time allows, because I think it's very important what you were mentioning, for instance, involvement of trade unions, and we involve also trade union in SafeHabitus, so perhaps we can go more into details on that. But thanks a lot for bringing us this perspective of the visa scheme in the UK. I think it's very complementary with the other models. And now we are going to hear another one that is for sure very relevant when it comes to seasonal workers in the agricultural field in Europe. And I think there was somebody in the chat mentioning, I would like to know more about Eastern countries. And for this, I would like to welcome Monica Servan from the ICCV Romanian Academy, and also Alin Crăciorul, Lucian Blaga University, who are going to present us with the Romania seasonal migration and agriculture panorama. I mean, it's the intra-European mobility in the case of Romania. So good morning, Monica and Alin, and please, the floor is yours for 10 minutes. You are the last country case study that we are going to learn from before we move to the Q&A.
Okay, Patricia, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Please confirm me that you can see my slides.
Yes, we see.
Yeah?
We see the presentation, Alin. Thanks.
Thank you. I will try, of course, to be as brief as possible and to respect the 10 minutes. And I think our insights and our perspective will provide the complementary approach to the ones presented from scholars in destination countries. And we'll discuss about seasonal migration from Romania in a broader framework, because this is part from the general migration from Romania. Romania is one of the main origin countries in terms of migrations, and today about or between 3 and 5 million Romanians live abroad, mainly in other European countries. Extremely important, this represents about 18% of the population of the country. And of course, if we look at the active population, the percent is much higher. The main destinations are Italy, Germany, Spain, UK, and France. At global level, this is also important because Romania ranks among the top 20 countries in terms of size of immigration. And this phenomenon has important consequences at national level. On the one hand, of course, there are important challenges generated by this migration, brain drain, the loss of the working age population, children or elderly left behind. And on the other hand, of course, there are also some positive or some benefits related with this migration. We can look at economic remittances or social remittances. And in the case of return migration, we can discuss about entrepreneurship or other development of new skills and competencies. However, if we look at the seasonal migration and the seasonal migration in agriculture, of course, the core of our webinar, we can see that this is important within the general picture of Romanian migration. And it started about 3 decades ago. The first bilateral agreement was signed between Romania and Germany. And after that, Romania had multiple bilateral agreements with other countries. And an important part of the Romanian seasonal migration in agriculture was mediated by public institutions. In this regard, we have some statistics from that period, and we can see that the Germany and Spain were in top, and the migration towards Germany, the seasonal migration in agriculture, were at that time over 100,000 seasonal migrants. On the other hand, towards other destinations, Italy, France, and other European destinations, the flows of migration were not mediated by the public institutions, and there were also contracts mediated by private companies or individuals who discussed directly with employers. After 2007, when Romania joined the EU, the gradual lifting of restrictions on the labor market generated a higher propensity for seasonal migration in agriculture. And the recent reports estimates that Romania, along with Poland and Bulgaria, are the most prolific origin countries. However, even if we have this massive migration from Romania, in general, the subject was not present in the mass media or on the public agenda, and it was not a major point of interest within the Romanian society, excepting maybe a label of capșunar, which means capșunar is the word in Romanian, which means strawberry pickers, which has become a lasting and pejorative appellation for all unskilled or semi-skilled migrants who emigrated from Romania. Recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the migration in agriculture has emerged as a significant topic in the Romanian media. And you have on the slide a picture from a Romanian airport during the COVID-19 pandemic, where several thousand workers crowded, even if there were at that time strict travel restriction in the country. And this event and major attention in the media raised some attention and some questions about the seasonal migration from Romania. However, if we look at how this topic was reflected in mass media, we can see that there was a rapid loss of interest, and in general, it was mainly about institutional voices and not about real people who present their stories. In social research, in scholarship in general, this topic represents the primary focus only occasionally. And in general, seasonal migrants are discussed along with other types of migrants and not as a special category of migrants. There is little, I can say, evidence on this migration at this moment. It is then of increasing this scholarship, and in general is based on community case studies conducted in Romanian villages. And if we look at the topics approach in this scholarship, we can identify two general types, or at least two general categories of topics. We have migrants agency and some specific features of those who migrate for working seasonally in agriculture. And from this perspective, there are some evidences that migrants are actively seeking arrangements, so they are not captive to or linked to only one employer. They evaluate the existent opportunities and they change destinations, they change employers, and then they try, of course, to get maximum from this type of migration. Also, it can be considered as part of a larger perspective that consider the life of individuals at origin, and many of these migrants developed long-term strategies where they embedded or they incorporated this type of migration as part of their employment strategy. And this is also linked with the fact that many of them don't work during the time in Romania, and they are dependent on this type of employment, of this type of seasonal employment. In terms of demographics or social demographic characteristics, in general, those who work in agriculture abroad had a lower average age, so they are young people, many of them, and many of them had lower or less paid work experiences in Romania. So for some of them, these type of experiences are the first work experiences, the first work of paid work experiences abroad, and in a way, this shaped their expectations and their perspective on work. On the other hand, we can discuss about migration in agriculture from the perspective of its impact on the origin. And if we look at the existent literature, we can identify consequences at individual level, consequences on their families and on the communities of origin. In terms of economic impact, there are some studies which highlighted that there is a limited economic impact, and in general, this type of migration is, as Carlos and Johan said at the beginning, linked with vulnerability, and it's not a way of escaping this vulnerable condition. Also, in terms of human capital accumulation during migration, we can see that in general, many of them consider that this is not a learning experience, and they don't accumulate human capital during their stay abroad. And also, they have significantly higher probability of being unemployed after return in Romania and not enrolled in educational programs also.
I think we need to move forward. We have some minutes
in
left.
1 minute I will finish, of course. Only one idea that many of them are originating in Roma communities, and this is also important in terms of intersectionality with migration, with gender and ethnicity. And the SafeHabitus project, I think it will be extremely important in Romania because it will generate new insights about seasonal migration and will allow us to understand health and safety in a broader perspective. On the one hand, we link the destination and origin perspectives, and on the other hand, we'll have the perspective of farmers at origin. In our communities of practice, we can discuss about the consequences generated by seasonal migration on national and local agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Aline, also because this brings again another perspective that is very important, and is like a country that it has been a significant health workforce for the rest, if I might say, as you express in those numbers of the number of workers that are working agriculture in other countries is very high, and there are a number of I would say terms that have been mentioned across all the presentation: the intersectionality of the vulnerabilities for the migrant populations, but also the COVID-19, the aging issue with the labor shortages, the wages negotiation, housing, that we are going to perhaps address that now in the Q&A, quota, the bilateral agreement, the schemes, and lack perhaps of national programs and lack of national policies, but also with this social conditionality of the CAP coming. So we wrap up. Again, thanks a lot to all the speaker teams, Alessandra, Aline, Carlos, Juan, Joan. You are going to speak again, but first, because there was like some comments going on in the chat, and also some of you are starting to write to me, and I'm going to invite our colleague partner Sarah Otzhood from the social insurance for agriculture, forestry, and horticulture in Germany, because you wanted also to comment, to react perhaps to the German presentation from Tim, and also to share your point of view on that, and then we can perhaps open some debate. So, Sarah.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Tim Zahn, I'm going with your presentations. First of all, thank you for your contribution on presenting the extracts from your interesting report. We, as the Social Insurance for Agriculture, Forestry, and Horticulture, fully agree that abuses should be pointed out. That is, of course, very important. But it seemed to us that it's a little bit like the general conditions on the farms would be not very good, and I think that is actually not the case. So of course it's good to look and to have an insight in the bad conditions, but I think overall the conditions on the German farms are quite good, especially on small farms, family farms. There's a close relationship and nearly family relationship between the farmers and the employees, and so my point is that is important to look and have a holistic look at the farm conditions, and they are not just bad, they are also in very much cases very good, as we also do farm visits and inspectorates, and for example in the COVID-19 pandemic it was very good work together with the farmers, where we make exemplary concepts of hygiene systems, and also the trade supervisor authority during the inspections was very good with that. So that was my point, that of course we have to look at some cases, but the few cases are not the general conditions in Germany. That was my comment on this.
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, I understand that you are referring this holistic view, and I will give the floor to Tim to react, but I also know that Ivanov from EFTAT also wanted to, I think you wanted to react also around this topic, Ivan, and also to share your point of view on this, and then let's also give the floor to Tim.
Yeah, Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I want to have like to do a general reaction on what has been presented, but also to react a bit what Zara and team said, because I was previously also very active in Germany. But let's start with a general remark. Just for your information, I'm the political secretary for agriculture at the European Federation of Food, Agriculture and Tourism Trade Unions. And I want to congratulate the SafeHabitus project for organizing this event, because I think it's very important to showcase the situation of migrant workers in European agriculture. And I think it's a good work which is done within the project, since we have been also discussing lately with DG Agri that the data information available about migrant workers, it's very fragmented across Europe, and it would be good to have like a more case studies and more information, more reliable figures on how many migrant workers we have, and how their situation, working and living situation looks like. And I think that the pandemic gave some push and shed some light on this group, but still there's a lot of work to be done. And I think this today's event is making a very good contribution to that. Let me also stress that it's very important also to include social partners, trade unions, and employers association in this in such endeavors. We have been saying that the importance of wage labor is increasing in this shift towards more industrial way of production, and for that reason we need to have both sides, the trade unions who are representing the employees, and the employers associations representing the employers in these discussions, because they are the one who are shaping and designing the working conditions. So I wanted to stress this, and when talking about trade unions, in terms of the workers on the worker side, I think it's also important to include trade unions, since we have like a big amount of knowledge which we accumulated within EFAT and within the trade unions across Europe, because we've been very active on this issue, on the issue of migration, for many years. We have affiliates who are for many years, even for decades, running awareness raising campaigns for migrant workers in European agriculture, and they are well aware of the situation of migrant workers on the field, and they can share the experience, very practical experience on the ground, with other civil society organizations and with the academia. And there's a plenty of knowledge there within our organizations. That I just wanted to stress this. And we know, I mean, it's a very it's a difficult topic, I know. I mean, I'm not going to repeat what has been presented, the problems, the challenges migrant workers face. For us trade unions, it's also very challenging, since we have, of course, many difficulties organizing those workers, since they change locations, they live and work in rural areas which are isolated and far distance from where trade unions usually have their offices and where they operate. But still, I mean, we've been trying a lot to improve the working and living conditions of migrant workers, even if if most of them are not organized in our organizations. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we need probably to have a holistic approach. I mean, it's a word which has been has been mentioned steadily in different contexts. But I think it's important also in this context to have like a broad, comprehensive approach, which which starts probably with information provision. As I mentioned, many member organizations of our federation are doing awareness raising campaigns in Italy, in Spain, in Germany. We mentioned already the initiative Faire Landarbeit, which is like where IG Bau, our member organization from Germany, is like a lead partner in this initiative. But it would be also important to look at the policy level. And I think our federation and also the employers on the employer side, GEOPO, will play here a crucial role. We mentioned also the social conditionality in the common agricultural policy. but there are also issues with recruitment. I don't know if you know, but EFAD also came up recently with a proposal for an European directive on labor intermediaries and inspections, and on tackling subcontracting abuses in subcontracting chains. Okay, subcontracting is not that relevant for the agricultural sector, but I think we've spoken about intermediaries in Italy, the caporalato, I mean, part of the problem is also the enforcement of the rules, and for that reason, we need also to increase the frequency of inspections. We will need also to look at the industrial policy, and their collective bargaining and social dialogue shall play a major role. I know that we have a really good social dialogue at the European level, and we are discussing the issue of migration, of labor migration, of seasonal work, of social conditionality. And in the meetings of our European Social Dialogue, we will have a plenary meeting in the beginning of December, where we have the topic also on the agenda. But it's also important to work like with the broader civil society, as for instance, the colleague in Germany mentioned that Oxfam worked very closely with the PECO Institute, which is the institute but from our German affiliate, to look at the working and living condition of migrant workers, but to broaden a bit the picture and to include also the supply chain and the possibilities which are there to improve the working and living condition of migrant workers. So I think it is also it is an important aspect to work also to cooperate with the broader civil society and to see how this problem could be tackled. And let me conclude a bit with the social conditionality, since it's mentioned also the policy level, and this is like like the main realm of activity of our federation. I mean, the social conditionality was recently introduced in the Common Agricultural Policy, and it mainly says that farmers who don't respect some labor law provisions could get the direct payment they receive from the Common Agricultural Policy reduced or even cut off if the violations were severe, and it also depended on the extension of the violations. But I mean, let's put it that way. I mean, by introducing the social conditionality in the Common Agricultural Policy, all the work is not done. And I mean, the social conditionality will not solve all the problems. I mean, of course, it's a big victory in terms of improving the living and working conditions. But it also depends on how it's implemented in the different member states. And that's what we are currently discussing. For now, we have just only 4 member states who implemented this. 4 member states out of 27, and we need to see how it's implemented in terms of level of sanctions and how it's enforced in reality. And let me conclude just with what Sarah said. I mean, and probably team would also react to that, but since I was previously active in Germany, I would like to briefly comment on that. I mean, sure, it's not the case that all the conditions at farms in Germany are bad, but since we are very much talking about this issue, I think I would very much disagree with saying that we have just very few individual cases. I think there's a systematic issue with the working and living conditions of migrant and seasonal workers in European agriculture, also including in Germany. And that doesn't mean that all bad, but they're not just few individual cases. I just wanted to stress this at the end.
Okay, thanks, Ivan, for this very comprehensive reply. I think you touched upon like many different topics, and as you said, it's a sensitive topic, but it is very important that the debates happen, and that the cases, good practices for cases, as was also one of the recommendations coming from Sam from the UK, are also cross-pollinate across country, which is a bit also the purposes of SafeHabitus, and also bringing all the different actors, because such a complex issue cannot be solved in isolation. And you mentioned, for instance, the social partners or the industrial partners, that indeed in the committee of practices of SafeHabitus, they are also having an important role in the discussion and in the debate. This is very interesting, and I don't want to cut anybody, but I'm also conscious a bit of the time and that some people will need to probably leave soon. I'm going to give now the floor to Sergi Keral from GEOPA, and now also I know that you, Jarko, has been trying to comment on that. So please, Sergi, briefly, I know that there are a lot of things to be said about this. If you can tell us in some minutes only.
Yeah. Thank you, Patricia. I hope you hear me well.
Yes.
So my name is Sergi Keral. I'm the political secretary of GEOPA, which is the European Employers Organization for the sector. Together with EFAT, we are European social partners for the sector. We are also partners of the SafeHabitus, and I think that already shows the commitment of the employers to change the situation in the sector. But I had a general question for all the people that have presented. I think our colleague from Germany wanted to present some recommendations on how to improve the situation, and perhaps that is my big question for all of you, because it is clear that there is a part of the sector that's experiencing all these, let's say, undesirable conditions in terms of work and also in terms of migrant workers. But if you look at the reality, you need to understand that, or perhaps you need to ask yourself, why is agriculture one of the sectors suffering from this and not the rest of the sectors? Our main position is not to tackle even more the farmer, but to propose solutions for the root causes that lead to this situation, because this situation is nothing but a consequence on how agriculture is treated at European level, and especially what are the market conditions for farmers. And I think the German colleague already presented the situation on how farmers are given the price at which they have to sell, which is unheard in any other sectors. And it's also often the case that farmers are forced to sell at a loss, which I remind all of you that is an illegal practice in other sectors. It is forbidden for a supermarket to sell at a loss due to competition law. And yet we have a very significant amount of farmers forced to do that by the market itself. So if we focus on the role of the employer in agriculture and the role of the farmer, to that extent, we need to understand that it is in many cases impossible from an economic point of view to improve this situation, because the alternative is no farming at all. And we need to propose solutions, as I was saying, to tackle this from the very beginning. So why is farming in this situation? Because employers are definitely here. No employer wishes to live in this sort of undesirable situation. Everyone wishes their companies were advanced and technological and digital and automatized, and that they could offer good conditions to their employees, because that's the main tool you have to tackle staff shortages, which is the challenge number one for the sector at the moment. But the resources are not there. The overall situation is not there, and the social context is not there either. And with that, I mostly point at the absolute lack of recognition of the sector, which is something that needs to be immediately addressed at all levels. And perhaps just a self-reflection after I launch this, a call for solutions, call for proposals. A self-reflection is most of the persons that have presented today said, yes, well, this is a part of the sector, this is a part of the sector, this is a part of the situation. But it's so magnified that if you look at the average citizen, it's the only thing that they have in mind. It's the only image that they have in their heads when you speak about agriculture. So the warning is, we need to be careful when we have public speeches and public presentations on this situation, because it ends up spreading to the entirety of the sector, and that is very detrimental to the image of the sector, which is already perhaps one of the lowest in Europe. And the second reflection is the need to depart from the sanctions approach, because as much as EFAT thinks that it's a great victory, while it's not yet introduced in practical terms, we don't think that adding more sanctions to farmers that already face extremely adverse market conditions will change anything. It will only add complexity to those that are already doing a good job, and it will not help those who are not doing a good job to do a good job. So we need a positive and a constructive approach at all levels in agriculture, and we need to depart from pointing the fingers at farmers, because farming is only the first step in a very long value chain. This chain ends with the consumer, and we need to understand that the consumer perhaps needs to make an effort to pay for better conditions at the end in the sector. If not, the one main key risk that we run is social dumping to outside the EU, and there none of us have any power to control what the working conditions are outside the EU. If market trends drive the market to outsourcing the production outside the EU, there will be no employment, and the conditions outside the EU will be nearly slavery. So some reflections for you.
Thanks.
For you, and the commitment of the employers to be part of the solution, because indeed, employers are a key role player in the solution.
Thanks a lot, Sergi, for this reflection. I think that it brings back to the long value change that and it's again not only the farming but the farmers, and they are also in a sometimes vulnerable situation regarding the price production, but there are also so many other actors involved on that, and this call for proposal that you launch to try to address root causes and looked at possible positive solutions. For sure, like I think in the case of Romania, it was when we also saw like the media role in the debate, and for sure also media has an important role to play on that. And I don't know if there is also some reactions regarding from colleagues from Oxfam perhaps, or from University of Comillas at this point, for what the reflections that Sergi has been making, and also Ivan, or perhaps since Carlos will do some wrap up and reflections, we can address those there in that moment. Team, do you want to react on this, or this is a different question? Because okay, then I leave to you, and then I will go to Jarko.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Just quickly, also,
Yes.
so thank you, Sarah, for your input. From our experience, I have to agree with what Ivan said, and thanks a lot, Ivan, for your input. There is not only few cases of labor rights or of severe exploitative situations of workers in German agriculture, but there are many cases, and the Initiative Faire Landarbeit is actually a very good actor to know about these structural cases, because they do more than 5,000 talks with workers every season. One thought I think is very important, what both of you, Ivan and Sergio, also raised, is the topic that this is an international European debate. We had discussions with the German Ministry of Agriculture, and they said, conditions here are actually good. We shouldn't be changing too much, because actually production in Germany is much more expensive than in many other European cases. And if we raise the standards here further, then there will be less production in Germany, and we don't want that. So that shows to me, even though I do also think this cannot be the solution if there are exploitative working conditions in Germany, it's cannot be solution to say we can't do anything without the European Union, but this shows to me that there is a European level to this. So we need to raise the bar in the entire European Union to also be able to increase the bar here even more, and to make an end to exploitative working conditions in Germany as well.
Thanks, Tim, for that raise the bar comment. I know that Jarko, you've been for a while with the hands raised. I cannot see you anymore, but if you want also to please comment and to ask, and then I will go to
Very
Klaus.
short comment, Patricia. Thank you very much for excellent webinar, and thank you for all the presenters. I'm Jarko Leppala from the Natural Resource Institute, Finland, and I'm bringing you now the kind of a Nordic view, because I think the Nordic countries is also a destination of many migrant workers, and it's very important for the research point of view, as I'm also a coordinator here in the work package 2 in SafeHabitus, that we have these publications and reports for these cases. So that's what I'm asking everybody, that if you have publications and these materials, please bring it to us, to our researchers. Second thing is that when we in the Nordic countries, we have a different kind of working culture. And this is also one reason that we are also very organized in Nordic countries. And our safety culture and working culture is a little bit different than, for example, in southern and central countries. And we see that when we had a Sakurima ghost action, and we were able to compare different working culture. And that's part of the problem solution. And I'm very sure about that, that also when I listen to these comments, that research in work management system is also important in this case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jarko, for this remark, for the Nordic perspective. And yes, there are already even like some ideas and discussion and practices in the chat that could perhaps fit what would be like some outcomes in SafeHabitus. I'm going to give you, Klaus, the last word for the question and answer, because we need to wrap up. Unfortunately, perhaps there is food for thought for another webinar on a similar topic in the future. But Klaus, you have the last Q&A. Please, your mic, you're mute, Klaus.
Patricia, thank you. Only short directly to Tim Zahn. Go to Mrs. Barrelman to the PECO Institute. We are together with her on the farms, to the migrant worker, to do some campaign for safety and health together with them. And she showed very surprised that her picture she already had about the working conditions are totally different. So maybe it's not the average you shown in your presentation. It's maybe the bad part of the contribution, you know, of the part that it's not the average, because we working for years to get better conditions on the farms, and there is still an effect. And of course, there are bad ones and there are very, very good ones. And to show at these both edges, I think it's not very good to that. So you have to have the average in the view. And of course, the bad examples, you have to care for it also. But the picture you have shown about the Germany's working conditions for migrant worker is a bit different in my very realistic point of view. And again, go to Mrs. Barrelman, to the PECO Institute, and discuss to her together, and go back to us, to me, or to Sarah Öztürk, and we discuss it in bilateral way, national way. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Klaus. I think you will need to conclude to continue with the bilateral exchanges and go more into detail with that. Joan, very briefly, please.
Thank you, Patricia. It's a very short comment because I think that everybody's right in this webinar. There are several positions, and it's a very quite common comment when we talk about some of these conditions we have been explaining here, that they don't represent the whole sector and the whole country, and this is true, and we all say that. But the thing is that we are putting the focus on a concrete problem, no? So yes, we may do another webinar explaining where conditions are respected and are correct and everybody is happy. But here we are focusing on some problems we have detected. So this does not imply that the whole sector is exploiting and extending bad conditions. But I think that as researchers, we have detected some social issues, some problems, and we are here talking about the insights of our research and discussing with the involved actors on about solutions, no? But it's very important to highlight that it's true, conditions in German agriculture, I would say, or in Spanish agriculture are not hell, okay? But there are very important problems, and this is what we are talking about. So just to put the focus on that, okay?
Exactly. Thanks a lot, Jan, for that clarification. I think that is clear that agriculture is like the pivotal sector in Europe for everybody and for the sustainability. But indeed, we are here putting the focus on some challenges, issues that have been mentioned, and that it's important that they are to be addressed without not going against other great efforts that have been already paid towards improving this situation. So we don't want anybody to feel frustrated on that. And if we are concentrating among us in the negative aspects, is because they are the ones that have been spotted as needed this. Well, a lot of discussion. As I said, as Johan said, everybody's right from a different point of view, let's say, but at the end of the day, I think that the important thing is that we are having this joint conversation and that some action is taken towards improving the safety and health also of the seasonal migrant workers. I'm going to give the floor now to Carlos Ruiz again from Oxfam for just the last reflection, perhaps next step. If you want to mention something on the work that you are doing for your COP in the framework of SafeHabitus, and then David will conclude the day because we are already 15 minutes late. Carlos.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, very brief. First of all, thank you all for very interesting presentation and also the debate. At the end of this seminar, it is important to highlight the importance of migrant labor in industrial agriculture, and also highlight the overall conclusion on the situation of migrant agriculture workers in the context of this kind of agriculture, not the industrial agriculture. Just to brief, this conclusion cover a number of critical issues with, while different in nature and manifestations, share a common pattern of challenges and right violations sometimes. I will not go deep. Remuneration deserves particular attention. The practice of reducing salaries often below the legal minimum. On the other hand, housing was a very interesting topic that almost everybody speaks today about. A basic and fundamental right is also affected in the sector, we can tell. Also, in terms of job stability, there are some issues. And a topic that not everybody talk about, and maybe the issue in occupational health and safety. There is a, I think I want to add also that there is a big problem on this topic. Today, the important thing was to put the reality of migrants of the table, not to search for solutions. That is why we are here at SafeHabitus, to look for solutions throughout the project. We are aware that in order to find solutions, we have to go to the root causes and work on the systemic problem and on the value chain. This is exactly what we are doing. And as Patricia said, we are developing the community of practice in Spain. Want more information, just can send an email. We are working on it in this way. In closing, I would like to thank everyone again for attending and hope you find it useful. SafeHabitus will continue to explore these issues, and we will be happy to share new development with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos. I would suggest perhaps before, because I know that also my colleagues from the communication will be doing an article about this. You've been asking, like, are we going to share the material, so on? Yes, please follow us, SafeHabitus, that it was shared the link. Perhaps we can now, Maite, you wanted to ask for a family picture. So for those of you that wish to be there, you can turn cameras on. You can put the presentation in the full panel, Maite, and if you wish, those that wish to appear will be in this picture. And then we will perhaps do that after I give the floor to David, to our coordinator, to say the concluding words of this, I hope, very interesting discussion for everybody. Even if we are like running late, I thought it was like a really meaningful that we dedicated a bit more time on it. David, would you like to say some?
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thanks first to Carlos and Maria at Oxfam, Johan and Joanne at Comillas, and then Alexandra, Tim, Sam, Alan, and Monica for their presentations. It was a very broad overview of some of the issues faced by some migrant workers across Europe. I'm just going to give a very quick personal reflection in terms of what I heard. So we heard about the importance of migrant workers to European agriculture and the growing importance of migrant workers and also seasonal and mobile workers to European agriculture. We heard that they experience some challenges, in some cases severe challenges in relation to access to housing and basic services such as health. We heard from several speakers, and this is an important point. We heard from several presenters and also contributions afterwards that not all migrant workers are exploited, okay? But we also heard a reflection that there are systematic issues confronting agriculture in Europe, and this points to the need for systematic change. So we need solutions. And we need solutions that will be effective at driving change in the places where it needs to be changed so that conditions can be improved. So this highlights the need to tackle the root causes and to strengthen the position of both employees and employers within the value chain. And this is where Oxfam, in partnership with Comillas, will be leading research into the potential of ethical trade forms to drive this process. We also heard an interesting point from Alexander, who highlighted the link between key EU policy objectives, in other words, the growth of organic and short food supply chains, and the need for migrant workers to support those sectors. And this highlights a need to apply food systems approaches when developing policy to ensure that social sustainability of farming is supported from the ground up. And finally, we heard from Alan and Monica, who highlighted the systematic impacts on the origin countries. And these origin countries are both EU, but also non-EU as well. And this is something that the SafeHabitus project will be engaging in terms of developing our understanding there. And the final point, and this is something that we will take on board based on the discussion that we've had here today, that we will look at the potential of organizing an additional or another seminar at some point in the future that focuses on the identification of solutions in practice. So this is taking a slightly different view in terms of identifying where employers and employees maybe have worked together to develop solutions to several of the challenges. And I will finish by that and thank everyone for their time that they've spent here today, and particularly the presenters, and to Adel for organizing the logistics around this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, David, for those concluding remarks and indeed for pointing out that there will be also another learning opportunities in this matter. This is the very first webinar that we are organizing in SafeHabitus, and we are still at the beginning. Yes, in the chat you have the link again to the website and to the newsletter so that you can receive information. I'm like really happy to see that even if we are past the time, we have like over 50 attendees. Thanks again, everybody, attendees, for your patience, all the organizers, all the speakers. Have a very good day, and let's be in touch.